Russian top military official injured in car explosion in Moscow. Ukrainian military damaged a Russian railway ferry. Netanyahu requested meeting with Trump. How Kamala Harris outpaced Trump and why Republicans got nervous. The latest news from Ukraine and around the world. Russia launched a drone attack on Ukraine on the night of 23-24 July 2024 and deployed 2 missiles toward Kharkiv Oblast. Ukrainian air defense has managed to down 17 of the 23 drones. Source Lieutenant General Mykola Lishuk, commander of Ukrainian Air Force, on Telegram. Quote, Russian occupiers struck Kharkiv Oblast with an Iskander-M ballistic missile and another missile, the type of which is yet to be determined, from Russia's Belgorod Oblast on the night of 23-24 July 2024. The enemy also attacked Ukrainian south with Shahed kamikaze drones from Russia's Primorsko-Akhtarsk and temporarily occupied Crimea. In total, radio engineering troops detected and tracked 23 enemy drones. Mobile fire groups from Ukrainian defense forces as well as Air Force anti-aircraft missile units and electronic warfare units were involved in repelling the attack. As a result of combat efforts, 70 enemy drones were downed, with most of them over Odessa Oblast. Details. Oleshuk also noted that Ukrainian defense forces have destroyed at least 8 Russian reconnaissance drones over the past and current day, including 4 Zala, 2 Supercam, and 2 Orlan 10 drones. The Astor Telegram channel has reported that a Toyota Land Cruiser was blown up near a residential building on Sinovinska Street in northern Moscow on the morning of 24 July. The car reportedly belongs to Andrei Torgashev, the deputy head of a radio transmission center for a military satellite communication unit. As Astor found out, the vehicle belonged to Andrei Torgashev, deputy head of the radio transmission center for military unit in Moscow Oblast. According to open source, military unit is the 89th satellite communication center of the Russian armed forces. It was reported that the explosion occurred as a man and a woman were getting into a parked car. Early reports indicate that the man's feet had been severed and the woman sustained shrapnel injuries. Both were hospitalized. Russian police said the explosion occurred due to the detonation of an explosive device. The Russian Investigative Committee has started a criminal case into the explosion. Investigators have classified the blow-up of a Toyota Land Cruiser in the north of Moscow as an attempted murder. One theory is that the blowing up of the car could have been connected to the official activities of its owner. The Ukrainian military hit the Russian ferry Slavyanin, which was used for military logistics. The Ukrainian General Staff stated that the operation was carried out by the Ukrainian Navy together with other units of the defense forces. The Russian ferry Slavyanin was based in the port of Kavkaz, which is located in Krasnodar Krai. This ferry was used to transport railroad, cars, vehicles, and containers for military purposes. Slavyanin ferry was the third and last railroad ferry that the Russian Federation had in the region. Russian Astor media reported dead and wounded among the ferry crew and port workers. The governor of the Krasnodar region said that unmanned aerial vehicles were used in the attack. Drones attacked a ferry ship in the port Kavkaz. Emergency services are currently working at the scene. The fire is localized. There is no threat of fire spreading. The governor said the vessel is designed to transport railroad cars and rolling equipment, dangerous goods, and oversized cargo. The size of the cargo deck allows for the transportation of project cargo that cannot be accommodated on conventional vessels. This is not the first Ukrainian attack on Russian ferries. In May, long-range ATACMS missiles successfully hit a ferry in Crimea. Then the Avangard rail ferry was hit in the small port of Crimea on the outskirts of the temporarily occupied city of Kerch. The Convert Trader rail ferry was also damaged near the berth of the Kerch Sea fishing port. Ukraine plans to use its own missiles in the future. The country's missile program has good dynamics, according to the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy said, "Our missile program has good dynamics, and although it is a difficult task, we are gradually approaching the ability to use our own missiles and not just rely on missile supplies from partners." What preceded it? Yesterday, July 23, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelenskyy held a meeting of the staff of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. One of the issues raised by the participants of the meeting was Ukraine's missile program. The head of state noted that the country is working to reduce its dependence on its partners in this matter. In particular, it concerns missiles for air defense. By the way, Ukraine has already used domestically produced missiles, specifically the Neptune, to strike Russian forces. In 2022, these missiles destroyed the Russian missile cruiser Moskva. Russian troops are building up forces in Ukraine's front line Zaporizhia Oblast, but they are not yet sufficient to launch an offensive. Dmytro Lyhovy, spokesperson for the Tavri Operational Strategic Group, said on national television on July 23. If we take the number of enemy soldiers, for example, in Zaporizhia Oblast, there are quite a few Russians here, almost 90,000. He said, noting that an additional 2,000 troops deployed to the sector in the past 3 weeks is not sufficient to launch effective offensive actions. Ukraine's main intelligence directorate also sees no signs of the enemy forming an offensive group in the oblast. Lyhovy also reported the recent destruction of 2 Russian anti-aircraft missile systems in the sector of the front. General of the German Armed Forces Carsten Breuer, in an interview with the Tagesspiegel, stated that in the near future there will be no significant advances by Russian troops on the front in Ukraine, with only small operations possible. According to Breuer, significant changes on the front will not occur soon, but Ukraine remains dependent on Western support. He explained, "In the near future we will not see any large-scale movements on the Ukrainian battlefield. The course and fortification of the front make this particularly impossible. The Inspector General of the Bundeswehr left for small, slow operations by Russian troops, but in his opinion, large-scale offensive actions will not happen." He added, "The concentration of troops will be immediately noticed and will lead to countermeasures." Recall Inspector General of the Bundeswehr Carsten Breuer also predicted that Russia could be ready to attack NATO in 5-8 years. The Russian will likely accumulate the necessary weapons and personnel during this period. The British armed forces needed to be ready for war in 3 years. Currently, there is a threat from 4 countries, including Russia, according to the head of the British Armed Forces General Sir Rolly Walker. Walker predicted that Russian President Vladimir Putin will be very, very dangerous when he emerges from the war in Ukraine and will want retribution against Western countries that support Ukraine's defenders. This situation could arise regardless of whether Russia wins or loses. He said, "The point here is when you think the Russians, are down, they will come roaring back to get their vengeance." He also admitted China's invasion of Taiwan, spoke about Iran's intentions to develop nuclear weapons, and recalled the threat from North Korea. That is why I get to this point by 2027, 2028, this convergence may have reached some sort of mutual singularity and your ability to deal with them in isolation. A specific crisis that can be managed by the rules-based system, I think, is significantly diminished, Walker said. At the same time, he clarified that Britain is not on an inevitable path to war, but it urgently needs to rebuild its ability to deter future wars. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, who is running for the presidency, is ahead of her rival Donald Trump in a recent poll, according to Reuters. The agency cited data from its own poll, according to which Harris is ahead of Trump. She is supported by 44% of respondents, and the former president, 42%. At the same time, both candidates had 44% support before Biden's withdrawal from the race, and at the beginning of the month, Trump was 1% ahead of Harris. According to Reuters, the results may indicate some limited movement toward the Democrats. Also, during her first campaign rally, Harris criticized her opponent. She said, "In this campaign, I promise you I will probably put my record against his, Donald Trump, any day of the week. Do we want to live in a country of freedom, compassion, and rule of law, or a country of chaos, fear, and hate?" It is important for Ukraine to maintain the momentum of joint work with the United States for just peace, according to President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy said the head of the office of the president, Andriy Yermak, spoke with Phil Gordon, the national security advisor to U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. It was at the vice president's level that America participated in the first peace summit. And It is important that the momentum of our joint work for a just peace does not diminish. The president emphasized that all partners of Ukraine at all levels know what the prospects are and that a just peace can be returned as soon as possible. U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle has decided to resign. She took responsibility for the failed protection of former President Donald Trump, who was recently shot at, according to The Guardian and the White House press service. In a letter to staff, Cheadle emphasized that the mission of the Secret Service is to protect U.S. leaders and financial infrastructure. However, on July 13, when Trump was assassinated, this task was not accomplished. She said, "As your director, I take full responsibility for the security lapse." According to the official, she doesn't want calls for her resignation to distract the U.S. Secret Service staff from the great work they do every day. In light of recent events, it is with a heavy heart that I have made the difficult decision to step down as your director, Cheadle added. By the way, Cheadle has held the position of director of the U.S. Secret Service since August 2022. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will meet with U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump today, July 24, according to the Times of Israel. According to Trump, the meeting with Netanyahu will take place at the Mar-a-Lago residence in Palm Beach, Florida. Trump added, "During my first term, we had peace and stability in the region, even signing the Abraham Accords, agreements on normalization of relations between Israel and Arab countries, and we will have it again." The former U.S. president did not disclose the exact time of the meeting, but according to the Times of Israel, it's likely to take place after the Israeli Prime Minister's speech in the U.S. Congress, which will begin at 2 p.m. local time. What preceded it? 2 days ago, on July 22, it became known that Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu flew to the United States to meet with President Joe Biden and address the Congress. Netanyahu is also expected to hold talks with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, who is likely to become the Democratic presidential candidate. According to CNN, Harris refused to preside over Netanyahu's address to Congress. The reason for this decision is unknown. In the event of being elected president of the United States, Donald Trump might reduce military aid to Ukraine and push official Kyiv towards a peace deal favoring Russia, according to Time. Officials in Kyiv have spent months pondering what a Donald Trump victory could mean for their war with Russia. Many have concluded that his history of respecting autocrats like Vladimir Putin and his transsexual approach to foreign policy could spell disaster for Ukraine. However, not all of their predictions are as dire as one might expect. One Ukrainian official, speaking on condition of anonymity, told Time that in the event of a Republican candidate's victory, the first 8 or 10 months, basically all of 2025, would be very hard. The official said Trump would be likely to slash aid to Ukraine and push Zelenskyy to accept a peace deal skewed heavily in Russia's favor. Like previous U.S. presidents, Trump could also seek a reset in relations with Vladimir Putin at the start of his term, but over time he will see that Putin cannot be trusted. The source also didn't rule out that the new U.S. president might eventually realize that Putin can't care less about Trump and this agenda, and that's when we could start to see some advantages from Trump, as he will not want to be played by Putin. Additionally, Time knows that in trying to persuade Trump and his future Vice President J.D. Vance, Ukrainians are also relying on help from allies in Europe and the American military-industrial complex, which could gain huge profits from continuing to produce weapons for Ukrainian armed forces. They can explain to Trump why this benefits many people in America, especially in red states. It creates jobs. It supports the economy, the Ukrainian official told Time. That's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. Like and subscribe.